There we go. All right, breathe. So here we've got our proof table. We've got to figure out what steps get us to the next one. So we're starting with an implies changing into an or, and that first piece got negated, which it should if it's using the implication rule, which it is. So this would be implication, whoops. So implication on 1, and your big tell is the fact that the implies changes to an or, but you should also always triple check that that first piece gets negated because that's what we need. For the next line, what's changing here is we have a sign flipping in the middle, and then the not is essentially changing everything inside those parentheses. So what pushes through negation is, whoops, I'm just erasing everything, is De Morgan's rule. So that's going to be a De Morgan's law. Nope, there we go. De Morgan's on line 2. You can write De Morgan's or De Morgan's law, whatever floats your boat. I'll usually just say De Morgan's because I'm too lazy to write an extra word. Only difference between line 3 and line 4 is we've got this double not that essentially disappears, if you will. So that'll be our double negation rule on line 3. Oh, I should clarify on the quiz, just because I thought it would be a bit easier to see. I kind of split it up. I make it 3 columns instead of 2. So you'll put the reason in the one and the just the number in the final column. I'm also hoping that'll make Blackboard grade it better, but Blackboard can't grade worth anything. So that's why I don't think I've ever mentioned that out loud. Always know that I go back and grade quizzes and exams by hand because as much as I try to have Blackboard grade things for me, it's terrible. So if it tells you you're wrong, you might be wrong. But there are other cases where it tells you you're wrong, but you're right. You just didn't type it in the way that I had in my key, and I can't think of a million ways that people would write it in. Anyway, so that's the thing. So that was double negation. And then from 4 to 5, the only thing that's changing is that these parentheses are moving. And that's okay because everything was an or, so we can just move those parentheses around. That's associativity on line 4. And then from 5 to 6, oh man, 5 to 6, we've got the big tell is that or changing to an implies, and that not in the front is also disappearing, which is what we need to use the implication rule. So that is also implication. And that was on line 5.
Can you repeat that last part one more time, please?
Yeah, so from 5 to 6, the only thing that the big tell is that the or changes to an sorry, not an and, the or changes to an implies, and this not goes away, which if we look at our implication rule, the thing with the or has the negation in the front, but the implies no longer has the negation. So since it changes from an or to an implies and that not in the front goes away, it follows the correct pattern for implication. So it's implication. Number 1. Okay. So in that first line, what's the difference between these two lines? So notice that this thing in the front stays completely the same. The only thing that changes is that it's now got a not in the front. And the big thing that really tips you off is the fact that that implication symbol turns into an or. And that's essentially exactly what our implication rule, which I wrote down here, says. It's saying if you take some P implies Q, which in this case, the P of the implies is much more complicated than just P, but we have something implies something else changes into not the first thing or the second thing, which is exactly what happened between line 1 and line 2. Any more questions on that question? Let me try to clean this up again.
I just wanted to say I really like the way you broke that down, like highlighting these different parts of the formula as you go down it. It just helps better understand it.
Hooray. All right, we good on that one then? Cool. I also just realized that I forgot to put the rules into the quiz like I did last time. And I don't have time to change it right now. So I'll have those pulled up on Teams when the quiz is going. And hopefully you can, it's not the end of the world, or maybe you have them pulled up on a different screen already or something. But anyway. Oh, I cut out. I was just saying I forgot to put the rules in the quiz because I'm a terrible person. So I will have them up on Teams. Like last time there was the built-in question into the quiz with the rules in them. I forgot that this time. I know, I'm the worst person to, I'm terrible. All right. So given that the domain is all movies, which I forgot to write down, and that S of X means that X is short, B of X means that X is boring, C of XY means that X is shorter than Y, we got to translate some things. So the first thing we want to do is translate the following into English. So if I wanted to do that in kind of the literal English, we've got for all movies X, if X is short, Adrian, can you answer this? I don't know who it is, but it might be Artie. I'm sorry. For all movies X, if X is short, then X is boring. We're trying to buy a house. That's what's going on. And so I had to have my fiance answer that call. Anyway, so for all movies X, if X is short, then X is boring. So another way you could phrase this is if you wanted to go like more everyday English, you could say all short movies are boring, which I'm not saying is true or false, but that's what that thing is saying. All short movies are boring. And then, so questions on that? So also on the quiz, this will be perfectly acceptable. On the exam, I might ask you to write it in more everyday English. So if you wrote what I just boxed, you would get partial credit, but I would want the kind of extra step to a bit more modern English for the final answer. But for the quiz that we have today, the literal translation is perfectly fine. And sometimes I will be, to be clear, sometimes, oh my gosh, my English broke. Sometimes finding a better English translation is really hard. So not all literal translations are super easy to transfer over into more modern English, if you will. But if it's something like this where it's not too difficult to maybe see how you could phrase it a little bit better, I might ask you to phrase it in more everyday English on an exam. And then we essentially want to do the opposite way. So now we have the English and we want to go to symbols. Oh, I didn't use the C of X in either of these problems. That's funny. No, the C of XY had nothing to do with either of these. I'll maybe add on an extra one that has that in a second. I'll tack on a part C to this. For all movies, if the movie short, then it is boring. Yeah, that's perfectly fine. That's Okay, the only thing that I would nitpick, and this would be a nitpick that I would nitpick on an exam, but not on a quiz. It might sound stupid, but you really need to include the variable name. So make sure the variable name gets in there somewhere. I will let that slide on quizzes. I'll like put a note in the little feedback thing, but on an exam, I would be a little nitpicky about that. But okay, but to be clear, you would only need to state it once. So if you said for all movies X, if it is short, then it is boring, and something like that, that's fine. But the variable name needs to get in there at least once. So if we want to translate some movies are boring into symbols, well, some essentially tells us that not necessarily all of them. So this would be our existential. So we would have some, there exists some movie. And it's just there exists a movie that is boring. So this would just be there exists an X, B of X. And that would be it. Let me try to do one last one. And maybe I'll scroll up here if this will let me scroll. To bring in that C of X, because I wrote these down so fast that I wasn't even paying attention to what I wrote down. Why don't we do... Let's do this. Every movie has another movie that is shorter than it. So let's translate that into symbols. So this will use the C of X. So every movie has another movie that is shorter than it. So the every movie should tip you off that we need a universal. So it's going to start off with for all X. For every movie, there is another movie. So for every movie, there exists a different movie. So there exists a different movie, so I need a different variable name. So every movie has another movie that is shorter than it. So to be clear, Y is shorter than X. Because for every movie, I pick that movie, you can find another movie that is shorter than it. So the exists is the shorter one. So when we would write our thing in the back, we would have that Y comma X, because Y has to be shorter than X. So for all X, there exists a Y such that C of a YX. For all movies X, there exists a movie Y such that Y is shorter than X.
Could you do it reverse? Have the X first, being shorter?
No, because of how the initial thing is phrased. Because if you wrote this, that means that the X movie is shorter. But what this statement is saying that any movie you pick X, I can find a movie that's shorter than it. So the one that is existing, if you will, is the one that has to be shorter. And since this is written as C of XY means that X is shorter than Y, I need Y to be shorter than X. And the oh my gosh, the order that you put these matters in the phrase. So if we need the one that's existing to be shorter than the for all one, then that one has to come first. Does that make any sense?
Yes. Yeah. Thank you.
Okay. So yeah, you do need to be careful in those ones that have multiple variables. The order does matter, and you need to just be careful, like go back and see how it's stated and how you want it to match up with the phrase. You wrote for all movies if the, oh, no, that was from, wait. Oh, yeah, that was from the other one. Never mind. Okay. One last thing before we actually move into the notes. That I forgot I put on the quiz, and I looked at the quiz earlier and I was like, oh yeah, that's on there. So I want to slip one of those in there in the warm up too. It probably would have been one that you guys would have been fine on, but well, now I got to pull something off the top of my head. Let's do y'all know what a prime number is?
A number that can only be divided by itself in one.
Yeah. So this is only divisible by itself in one. So 1 is not considered a prime number. 2 is the only even number. 3, 5, 7, 11, 13, 17, and so on. So like 9 isn't in there because it's also divisible by 3. So quick reminder of what a prime number is, which we actually define that in the next section. But so I'm getting a little ahead of me in case people didn't know what it was. But, and then let me think of one more. Let's do g of xy is essentially just going to be that x is greater than y. I don't feel like writing out the words. So the only other thing I'll ask you is to determine the true, false value of the following. So say we have this, this, and one more. So I'll give you like a couple seconds to write that down in case y'all have taken that down. And also think about it really quick. All right, so if we just want to determine the true false value, we don't have to really give any explanation or anything. So the first one is P if 13 would be 13 is prime. 13 is only divisible by 13 in itself, so this would be true. P of 16, 16 is prime. 16 is divisible by 8 and 2 and 4, so not just 1 in itself, so that would be false. Don't worry, the quiz doesn't have prime on it. Oh yeah. Apparently not. Let me zoom out a little bit so that I can keep everything in there, but that should help because I think it's just. So there's no prime on the quiz, so don't worry about that if you're iffy on prime. It'll be something that you should. It'll even and odd. If you don't know what even and odd is, I'm slightly concerned. But anyway, G of 7, 2 would mean that 7 is greater than 2, which is true. And then G of 100, 101 would mean that 100 is greater than 101, which would be false. I need to explain that. So, anyway, is there questions about this before I answer the question that just came up in chat? Okay. I need to clarify something about the time limit on the quiz, and I really apologize because I didn't realize how Blackboard handles it, because this is only my second semester doing things fully online on Blackboard, so I do want to apologize for that. So I do list a time limit on the quiz. The reason I do this is there's two reasons. What do I want to look at? Let's just do this. I do that for two reasons. I want to be able to know whether someone's taking way longer than they quote unquote should. And I also want you to be able to know about how fast you should be able to do these, because the exams will be timed and will be like officially timed, and it'll submit it at the end of time even if you're not done. With the quizzes, the way I set it up, and I went back and I finally actually sat myself down and took it in a student view to actually figure out what you guys see. So it does have the bar at the top counting down, and it's really menacing. So if you want, you can always click this little arrow and make it go away. So if that's like stressing you out, you can make it go away. The thing I didn't realize it does is it pulls up this very scary message at the end, and it says time has expired. Click cancel if you're not done and just keep working. Like, it's fine. There's no penalty. There's nothing's gonna happen. Just hit cancel and you can keep going. And again, I didn't realize it handled it like that. I'm really sorry. I thought it was just like, oh, time's up, but you can keep going. And it didn't give you this scary message that makes it look like it's officially out of time. So I'm really sorry about that. But you can take as much time as you need on the quizzes. It's just if this message pops up, you just got to click cancel to keep going. There's no penalty for it. There's nothing like that. It's just if the time does expire, you should kind of take that as a, oh man, I might need to study this a little bit better because I probably should have been done by now. Don't feel bad if you need to take more time. Take the more time. It's just kind of there to give you an idea of about how long it should take. Because of course this class is usually an in-person class. And you know, it's usually a thing where I give people 20 minutes at the end of class, and if they take more than 20 minutes, another class is coming in, so you don't have any more time than 20 minutes. So that's kind of why I put it up there, and I just didn't realize how Blackboard handled it. And I'm sorry about that. But you have however much time you need. It's just if that message comes up, just click cancel. And keep going, because you can take that time and so on and so forth. So I say 20 minutes on the quiz. I usually try to stop class 15 minutes before the end because really I try to make them 15-minute quizzes. So actually making it 20-minute time limit is giving you more time than I think you should need. So technically I think they should be 15-minute quizzes, but I just gave it a time limit of 20 minutes because why not? I'll also mention that while I'm rambling about this stuff right now, on the exams, so your class is a 75-minute class. And I would do this in person too, because usually there's like a 10-minute buffer that you can kind of give over, and then the next class can just wait outside. But anyway, so it's a 75-minute class. Usually what I do with exams is I have this process for trying to figure out approximately how long it will take the quote unquote average student to take an exam. So if it's a 75-minute class, I usually try to write a 60-minute exam for quote unquote average student. And I will give you a time limit of 85 minutes on Blackboard. So I try to write approximately a 60-minute exam for quote unquote average student, whatever that means. It's a 75-minute class officially, and you have 85 minutes, so you kind of have an extra 10 minutes. If you have a class right after that, it might be a little iffy. Is that what it is? It's coming up faster than we expect, faster than I expect. I gotta get on my life here. Is it really 2/4? That sounds real fast, but I believe you. It is Thursday, February 4th. So, oh, wow, your exam's next week. That's really crap. That's fast, boy. Okay. So that's wow. I really did that. I really did that. Okay, that's wow. All right, well, that's what I did. So that's when it is. So what's gonna happen super soon that I didn't realize is so by the end of the week, so give me till Friday night, but I'll try to have it out earlier on Friday. I will try my very best. I'll post a review packet. Okay, I didn't even realize it was coming up that quick. I thought we had more time. But I'll post a review packet with questions and the topics that you'll need to go over. And then I'll try to take some time out on Tuesday. No, it's next week. Next week is February. February 4th is next week. Oh my gosh. All right, here's a question. And please, by any means, if you have a problem with it, let me know. Does anyone, and you can even just raise your hand in the little thing in Teams and try to be kind of anonymous because I'm the main one who's going to see that. Does anyone have a problem with me moving the exam to the 11th? So not next Thursday, but the Thursday after. Seriously, if you have an issue with it, then I can't do it, which is fine. If you have an issue with it, let me know. But if no one has an issue with it, if no one lets me know that there is an issue by the end of today, so if you even want to be super anonymous and send me an email, so if for some reason you're like, no, I can't do the 11th, send me an email or let me know. Otherwise, I'll do the 11th. Because again, this is even I don't know what I was thinking of when I put it that quick. Okay, so most people are telling me they prefer the 11th, which is great, and it sounds like it's probably going to end up being the 11th. Tell them to my accounting teacher. Well, I'm sorry, I can't help you on that. But again, seriously, if anyone has a problem with it, let me know. I'm not saying that I think anyone will, but if you do, it's fine and let me know. Because those things should be set in stone and they were set from the first day. So if you're like, yo, no, Okay, I've said that a bunch of times. Let me know if you have a problem with it. If no one tells me by the end of the day that there's an issue, I'll send out an email making it a official change. So I'll give people a little bit of time to let me know. Yeah, it would pretty much, we haven't covered much. So it'll cover more material because we'll have another week. But honestly, it will cover about the amount of material that I had originally planned to be on that exam, because we haven't gotten as far as I thought we would by now. So pushing it back will actually pretty much keep it to just a, so on the syllabus today, we should have been doing 1.5 and we're still on 1.3. So pretty much shifting it back a week is going to have as much content as it should have had on it, which would be chapter 1. So yes, technically, compared to if I was to scrap together an exam next week, it will technically have more material. But I think it will be better if we push it back. So again, anyone has a problem, let me know. Send me an email. But otherwise, I'll send you out an email late tonight or tomorrow morning making me change official if that's going to happen. And most likely will then be the 11th. I'm glad someone asked that because I didn't even realize it. Oh, I need to get my life together. All right. I swear I'm a professional. I shouldn't say these things when I'm recording a class. Anyway. Let's get started on notes, shall we? Oh, that's a good question. Let me pull this up real quick. I don't think I have said that. Only open during class time, or will we be able to take it at any time during the day? I am holding assessments as if like during class period. So if there for some reason is something that goes wrong and you can't do it during the class time, then you need to let me know. But it will only be available during that class time. Now I will say, if you get here 15 minutes late, can you take that extra 15 minutes? Yes, because it'll just be timed for an 85-minute exam. But if you get here after class ends, then it won't be up anymore and you won't be able to find it. So there's a little bit of wiggle room, but it's supposed to be taken during class. So that class time will be for the exam on Thursday, on the probably 11th. Okay. And we've got a baby amount of notes before the quiz because I rambled so much about everything else. Oh, it's all right. So we've got 2 last problems in here. This next problem is kind of hefty, so that's why it was we might not even get through it, but we'll see what happens. So we've been talking about predicates. You have some of this translating predicate stuff on your quiz. So let's say if you, oh my gosh. Can I read? For the following predicates, the domain is all cars. So S is gonna be X is a sports car. E is expensive. A of X, Y will be X is safer than Y. The first thing we want to do is translate this kind of long. You won't have one this long on the quiz, but we're going to start working up to it. So we want to translate this big, long, nasty thing into everyday English. So here is when we're actually going to want to try to, I'm going to write it down literally first, and then we're going to try to figure out a way to make it sound a bit better. So if I wanted to translate this literally, so we have for all cars X, and then we come up to an implication, because so we have the if S of X, then that whole nasty thing at the back. So if X is a sports car, then, and then after the implies, we have there exists. So then there exists a car Y such that Y is expensive and Y is safer than X. Be careful of the order there. So Y is safer than X. So that would be the literal translation. So what is this kind of saying here? So for any sports car, there's going to be another car that is expensive but safer than it. So for any sports car, there is a more expensive, sorry, doesn't necessarily mean more expensive. So for every sports car, there's an expensive car that is safer than it. And literally just kind of chopping down some of those extra words in there is really what gets you to, there's probably a slightly better way you could do it. But what I would say to sound a little more everyday English would be for every sports car, can I write? I can't speak, I can't write. For every sports car, there is an expensive car that is safer than it. That. Now, I will say with these kind of translation things, I'm very lenient because as long as you're getting the point across, I will say with the everyday, I'm a bit more picky because, you know, you want to make it sound at least something that you might hear. I know it still sounds a little weird for every sports car. Sounds is still a bit odd, but it doesn't have that for all cars X. If X is a, you know, removes a lot of the variableness to it. But as long as it's kind of getting the point across and sounds decently like modern English, good. For these literal translations, that's when you want to just, the only thing I'm picky about is for the literal translations, make sure that the variable name gets in there at least once with their for all in there exists. If you don't say for all, well, actually, should be careful. If there's only one variable, make sure the variable name gets in there at least once. So like in our warm up where it was for all movies, they were boring or something like that, where I said something like for all movies X is boring. If you just said for all movies X, it is boring, that's fine. Like if you dropped that second X. Here we want to be careful because there's more than one variable, so you need to make sure to include that variable name whenever it's necessary for context. So here we say for all cars X, you would want to specify if X is a sports car because there's another car coming up down the line. So is that one the sports car? Is the other one the sports car? And then you say if there exists a car Y such that it is expensive, well, is it the sports car or the new one? You know, so if there's more than one variable that's coming up in these, for the literal translations, make sure that variable name kind of pops up whenever it's necessary. Hopefully that made sense. Oh boy. 10 minutes? This might take 10 minutes. Well, that's fine. Questions, concerns on that? Okay. So the next thing we want to do, and this is probably the last thing we're going to be able to do because it's going to take a little bit, is we want to formally negate the statement in part A, simplify your negation so that no quantifier and no connective lies within the scope of the negation, then translate your negation into everyday English. That should have been a capital. So this is where we have those new rules, the universal and the existential negation, and then we need to like push everything through until the not is just in front of a thing that's not connected to an and or an or. So how much space did I leave myself for this? Ooh, plenty. Okay, good. So to rewrite, so we want to negate, and then the original statement was for all x, s of x implies there exists a y. Ooh, this one might be a little, so if you're doing this like type-wise, I would say make the, ooh, oh, there's an E and an A. Oh no. Maybe make, you know, these two lowercase if you're trying to, you know, because you don't have the symbols for their exists and for all. Or whatever helps you, whatever is best. But I know the other day I said for typing purposes at this point in time, you might just want to do the regular A and regular E, and now that messes that up. On the quiz, I did put in the backward symbols and the upside down A in the question, so you can copy them. Okay, anyway, so we want to negate this. So the first step for these, so remember these are fair game to do from scratch because they follow this similar pattern. So the first thing we always do is do that negation rule. So in this case, since it starts with a for all, that would be our universal negation. And remember what that says is that says that it essentially the negation comes inside of the quantifier and the quantifier switches. And then everything else so far is going to stay the same. This is going to be a pretty long negation here. So now the point is that again, we have this thing that says simplify your negation so that blah, 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 blah. So this negation being in front of a implies is not good. So we need to push that through. Well, we don't have a rule that tells us how to push a negation through an implies. So we need to switch the implies to an or using our implication rule. So that's the other kind of very common thing is if you have an implies to start with, and I'm messing it up, then you're going to end up using your implication rule. And remember in the implication rule, the first thing in the implication becomes negated. So that's why it turned into a not S of X. Oh my gosh, what is wrong with me? And I'm not writing the lines that these came from. There we go. So we need to change it over using our implication rule because we need to push that negation in the front through. So the implication rule tells us to negate the thing in the front, so the S of X became not S of X, and then leave the back alone. And your next, pretty much again, common steps for these is that once you have it into an and or an or, you push it through using De Morgan's. So there is a very common process for these. That would be De Morgan's on line 3. Now, there's a couple things at this point you could kind of make a decision of where you wanted to focus on first. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to clean up this not. Okay. You never really want to leave a double negation in. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to clean up that not and just make it a regular old S of X. Then everything else stays the same because we can only do one step at a time. So that's double negation on line 4. If you're trying to type this out, I apologize. That's going to be gross. Maybe just grab a sheet of paper. And so now the next thing we need to focus on is this not that's over here. Because that's in front of an existential quantifier, which is not good. So we need to deal with that. So we need to push that through. So essentially everything in the front is now kind of good to go. So this front piece is going to just chill. But now we need to use our existential negation. On line 5. You push the negation through and change the quantifier. And we've got 2 more steps. Because now the issue is that the negation over here is still not far enough back because it's in front of this thing that has an and. And that's not good. So we need to push it through one more time. And to push that through, since that is an and, we can push it through. There's no switching over using an implication rule or anything like that because it's not an implication, it's an and we know how to deal with that. If it's an and or an or, we know how to deal with it. It's De Morgan's. So we push it through, the sign in the middle changes. So that's De Morgan's on line 6. Our last step is kind of, I don't want to say it's unnecessary because that's not true. So remember how the existentials match up with a logical connective? The for all matches with the implies and the there exists matches with an and. So notice at this point, we've got this for all in the back, but it's got an or, not an implies. So the last thing you're going to do is you're going to change it back to an implies using an implication rule. So everything in the front stays the same. And then the for all stays. But then, okay, so if we're doing an implication rule, if we're starting with the or statement, the thing in the front needs to be negated. Okay, well, no, it's fine. I'm talking to myself, I'm sorry. So essentially, if I start with not P, the implication rule, the implies only has a regular P. So we're just going to go with there exists Y. Implies, but then the back piece always stays the same. So that would be implication on line 7. And now you'd be done. Because the only place we have a not is directly in front of just a predicate. There's no and or implies after that. I should be careful with the word after. Attached to that not. Like if there was, whoops, come back. If there was a not, like right here, or even right here, those two would be fine because it's not actually going to the thing with the and or the imply. See how it's like connected to the E of Y and it would have been connected to the S of X instead of something like this up here, where the not is actually in front of a set of parentheses with an and in the middle. That's the difference. So it can only be next to something that's just the predicate itself. But those aren't there, so oh man, I knew that was gonna happen. But that's how we negate things like that. Questions, concerns on that? So it's a very common process. You use the universal or existential negation. If you have, if you have universal negations anywhere to begin with, you will then have to use an implication rule. Then De Morgan's rule is your best friend. And if there's anything like double negation or anything like that that you have to do a little bit extra for, then there's that. But really, implication De Morgan's are the two main ones besides the negation rules that we need for these types of problems. I know we need to translate this, but I'm going to save that. So we didn't get through too much, but it's all right. Because I would like to give you time to start your quiz now because it's 15 minutes before the end of class. So it's on the assignment tab. Let me make sure it's up. Yep, it's up. Let me pull up the rules in case you need them. Maybe you have them yourself, but if you don't have them, I will pull them up really quick. Remember, especially if you came in late, you might not have heard me. The time limit is unofficial. If it comes up with that really scary box that says time's run out, just click cancel and keep going. You can take as much time as you need on these quizzes. It's just kind of to give you an idea of how much time I think it should take you. All right, rules are up on the screen if you need them. Once you're done, of course, you may leave. Have a great day. I'll see you next Tuesday. I'll let you know if the exam's moving. And I'm going to stop talking now.
Do we need to write the given for the quiz? Okay, thank you. I think you're on mute.
Yeah, I am. So no, essentially if it doesn't have the blank next to it, then it's just the given. So in the first question, the first one's the given, and then I think the second one there's two givens. I probably should have written given. I'm really sorry. Let me make sure. Oh, wait, maybe, I'm sorry, I misunderstood your question. You will need to fill, yeah, sorry, you'll need to write given in some of the reasons. But nudge, nudge, wink, wink, if there's no place to put a step in, it's probably one of the givens. Sorry, I forgot how I laid out this gosh darn quiz.